Welcome everyone to the V3 implementation call. Today is April 13th. We appreciate you being with us today. Just as a reminder, these meetings are recorded. We offer them on our website and also on our YouTube channel. So if you miss a session or if you want to go back and review a part of a meeting, you are welcome to do that. Our wonderful Chris Hoffman timestamps the videos. Those are available, the time-stamped ones are available on the YouTube channel, and then you can just jump directly to the topic that you're interested in. As always, please update your name in the participant list with your affiliation, especially if you're a vendor. It helps us to keep track of vendor participation. But even if you're not a vendor, we do love to see your affiliation in the participant list because it just helps all of the people on the call know who's talking and how they fit into the whole scheme of EMS stakeholders. Feel free to unmute or use chat if you've got a question or a comment during these topics. We really appreciate your input and suggestions and questions and even the hard questions. We appreciate it all. So we always learn a lot from you all from these meetings, and we hope that they're as valuable to you all as they are to us. So with that, let's move down to the agenda. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to turn over a little bit of time to Jen Correa. She's going to give us a maintenance update, and then she's also going to talk for just a minute on eResponse 03 incident number. We had some questions from stakeholders about regarding incident number tracking, and Jen wanted to just give us a little bit of insight there. So Jen, if you're all connected and all good, I'll just turn it over to you.
I think so.
Okay.
So I think we're good to go. Good morning, everybody. The maintenance updates, and you can find the maintenance schedule on the NHTSA.org site if you go into technical resources. It is located there as well for the dates if you ever forget what I say on these meetings. So right now it is scheduled for April 19th through the 20th. It's a big update, so all services will have some impact, but you shouldn't notice it. It should be done by the time you guys get to work on that day. And so there you go. Hopefully it will not. If you do have any issues, just reach out and let me know so I can make sure it is related to the maintenance. And then also one other thing I wanted to let you know, I had a couple people reach out in the last few weeks about compliance testing for 3.4 and 3.5, and whether if you test for 3.5, it covers 3.4. And they are different. So you do need to have your compliance for both versions up to date until you stop using the 3.4. So if you still have clients that are on 3.4 and not off, and you need to be compliant, just make sure you keep that up to date. And then the other thing is the eResponse 03. So in February on this call, there was some discussion between a few of the states about being able to use the incident number as a single tracking number, and asking if the NHTSA could give basically guidance on how the number should be formatted or tell people what it should look like. And we had a few different discussions here with some different groups. And there are some issues with trying to tell folks how that should be formatted, because that usually will come from the PSAPs or the CAD systems and the 911 dispatch systems. There could be multiple PSAPs or CADs that are dispatching different agencies to the same instance. There could be various incident numbers for a single event. So it would be very hard for us to put out and say, this must be how it is formatted. The best that we could suggest at this time would be something that the states could work with their agencies and the CAD providers and their vendors and try and improve the data that's in there. I will give you an example. We had one state that sent us an example that their vendor was populating it with red, green, and blue, or red, green, and yellow. And so that was the only values that was in there. That would probably be not a good way to populate the incident number. But that would be something you need to discuss with them. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions about that. It looks like, hi, Benny. It looks like Benny said any way to link to the INFRS incident number. And that would be something that you'd have to work out locally.
There's a fire incident number in the e-outcome section.
Did anyone else have any other questions about the e-response 03?
Hey, Jen, this is Mark Roberts.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, this kind of, I think, goes maybe along with that, maybe not, but you can tell me. When it comes to patient matching and what's happening right now, we're seeing duplicates because of the matching that has been established, the criteria by NHTSA. And I'm just wondering if NHTSA is open to reconsidering the matching criteria that is used. So if we get a record submitted to us and then they go in and they clean it up for billing and then it gets resent, if they've changed certain fields, then the system thinks it's a new record, and then we end up with dupes, and we have a lot of dupes. So, it kind of comes back to the incident number, but it's not really the incident number that's the finding, because so many of your fire departments use a single incident number, so you can't track it back to a patient.
So incident numbers, the e-record 01 number, and there's a couple things with this. The e-record 01 number, that's the unique identifier that was in NHTSA before the UUID, which will come out with 3.5. So e-record 01 should be unique. If you combine that with the D-agency 01, 02, and 04 and e-record 01, but I know that a lot of people use for the PCR key, they include the unit identifier, and they also include one of the times. And so because those two elements are also included, those are subject to change quite often, unfortunately. So that's probably what is triggering. It all depends on how you decide what determines a record to be overridden.
Yeah, now that's not what I was told. So I think maybe this is a good time to talk about that, because I was told if e-response 01, e-record 01, e-response 14, or e-times 03, if any of those change, the system thinks it's a new record. And I was told that that was the algorithm that was established by NHTSA for verification if it's a new record. And I could not understand why we weren't looking at just e-response 01 and e-record 01 and saying if it's the same, since e-record 01 is unique, why would we look at the other times or the other fields? And so I think this probably, a lot of states have a lot of duplicates that they don't know about and they're not aware of. I certainly wasn't aware of this until it bit us really bad.
Yeah, so I know sorry, Clay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to respond a little bit to Mark. Yeah, so you described, Jen, the hash that we use, right? We take several elements and we kind of concatenate them, put them all together into a string, and that represents what we think is elements that are likely not to change between resubmissions of records, and that forms our hash. Mark, so it would be interesting to know what part of that, what is being changed on that record that results in it now indicating a new record. This was happening in Oregon a little bit. Josh worked with us on this for the state of Oregon. They were changing the time element with a resubmission for good purposes, but we had to understand that better. And so, Mark, if there's some part of that hash that's making that they're changing, we definitely tried to choose variables for the hash that would not change with like an update to a patient care record, right? But there is a time in there to make it unique. E-Record 01, it's the patient care report number, but there's no national standard for that. So each agency, every state perhaps could have the same record number for different patients, and so we can't use that alone.
No, I agree with that, but I think e-response saying if it's the same agency and it's the same record number, because it has to be either the call sign or the times that are getting changed. And I'm noticing it more with agencies that bill, because they're going in and cleaning things up and getting it ready to bill, which is then generating another record to be sent, which is then causing the duplicates. So I'm suggesting that we only look at e-response 01 and e-record 01 and pull the other out. Or while I believe your current matching is a recommendation, I don't think that we should all have to live with that, because I'm seeing a lot of dupes. I would be surprised. I would be shocked that agencies or states don't have a lot of dupes because of this matching algorithm.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Our algorithm that we use is really tailored towards a national audience. So yeah, e-response 01, e-record 01, those are hopefully unique within states. They're clearly not unique across states. So yeah, our hash is just what we use. It's likely to be unique across states. But if California wants to just use those two values and your process ensures you're mutually exclusive, gosh, yeah, go ahead and use it.
Well, it kind of makes me wonder, if we're getting dupes, that means we're sending you dupes, which means then your numbers are wrong as well.
If you're applying the whole hash, yeah, then we're getting dupes, and I'd love to know what they're changing, and so that we can make sure this works for California as well as it works for the other 49 states. And we worked this with Oregon as well with Josh. So yeah, would love to know what about our hash is causing the issue. That would be great to know.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is either the unit number or it's the time, because those are the only things that a billing agency would be changing, or a QI process would change, because highly unlikely you would change the agency number. And the e-record 01, they don't even know what that is. So there's probably little or no chance that they would be changing that. So the only two options that make any sense at all would be e-response 14 and e-times 03.
Yeah, and we're happy to work with you to kind of figure out how frequently that's happening. If there's something new on our end, we'd be happy to do this. And in the chat, you're correct, right? With version 3.5, the UUID will really help with this issue. And that was actually a strong reason, and in fact, probably the primary reason for the addition of UUID for version 3.5. Yeah,
I appreciate that. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of duplicates. So that in a state the size of California, that's a rounding error, but in other states, it may be a lot more significant.
And Mark, this is Josh. Just for the record, I agree with you 100%. I've been beating this drum for years and finally resigned myself to wait for the UUID to come out in 3.5. I couldn't get anybody to change the process.
Well, it didn't really come to light to me until recently. And I apologize if you had brought it up and I just missed it, because I certainly would have supported you on it had I understood the impact of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we were highlighting it, because I know this was one of the things that we talked about, and then the UUID came and it kind of, with 3.5, kind of tabled it a little bit. But yeah, I think, and Clay or Julianne, correct me if I'm wrong, but the vendor can determine what they use to signify a matching record. It does not have to be the PCR key, right? That the NEMSIS TAC uses?
No, we don't mandate or require the use of the hash that we've developed here. Yeah, no. Folks can states or vendors can do what they need. If they have a better algorithm, I'd love to hear about it. And if they're using different ones, that is perfectly fine. Yeah, we'd love, if we can improve our process. We went through a review with Josh, and again, as you mentioned, it's been several years ago. We tried to look at what part of the hash was failing its purpose with the Oregon records, and we did kind of an analysis of that. And if we need to revisit that, I'm clearly open to that. I'm sure Eric.
Knowing that we have the UUID that's coming down the road, but I still feel it's years off. I think that addressing this now with our vendors is really important for many different reasons. Just simply because, like I said, you're getting duplicates. If we're getting duplicates, we're sending you duplicates. And again, the numbers are small when you look at the total numbers, but they still are duplicates. And somebody will pick that up and make an issue of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, so just to call out again, if there are vendors or states that are using some algorithm different than what we use, just for a wipe and replace process here within the national registry, if there's some different algorithm or folks are using, we would love to hear about it, and we will certainly experiment with it.
And I will say, you may want to talk to some of your local vendors, as long as their eRecord 01 value does not repeat. So that's one thing you have. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think this is why those two additional, the time and the unit, were added to the hash at the TAC, was because there were vendors that did not have unique eRecord 01 across all of their states, right? So, or sometimes within their own state. So that's why those were added.
No, the scope was within an agency.
The agency ID, it's still the same with an agency ID.
Yeah.
As long as eRecord 01 is not repeated.
Yeah, my understanding is that back in the NMSIS 2 days, there was a product that reused numbers for EO101, the patient care report number, within a single agency over time. Like they would reset it every year. To me, that was non-compliance, but instead of addressing non-compliance, the NMSIS TAC and state vendors implemented this hash instead. And so now we are at this place today where someone corrects a time zone or a time or the unit that went on the call. That's all legitimate corrections, and it gets seen as a new record by all these systems.
That's a good point, Josh, because we had somebody who had their system set in the wrong time zone. They corrected their time zone, and about 70,000 records got sent.
Yep, every record.
Yep. So again, these are all good points, but they're going to be a problem. And while we know that 3.4 is supposed to be going away at the end of next year, I'm almost willing to bet somebody's paycheck that it might get extended. Sorry, Clay, not yours.
Oh no, this is a great discussion, and Josh is right. I mean, the issue is that it's eRecord 01 extends, when you're collecting data nationally, it extends far beyond a single agency resubmitting or resetting their value, right? If we just use eRecord 01, then every agency may change it not annually but semi-annually, or every 2 years or 3 years, and they may be different across different states, or the same in agencies across different states. So the definition is as Josh described, right? It needs to be unique, but trying to find some way to nationally ensure that a record value is unique across the country without some type of a organization or agency to monitor that. It just seemed like that was a solution that was a non-starter. So we're rediscussing, and it's valuable. We're rediscussing the very reason why UUID, I think, was introduced, and Josh was very was a big contributor to that idea. So yeah, if we want to somehow revisit that in some way, but I highly doubt that there'd be a way to mandate that eRecord 01 remain unique across the entire country. I would love to do that, but I'm just not sure who would say that and who would monitor that.
But you can't even do that with UUIDs. We have 100,000 medics we're going to be getting information in from different agencies, from different vendors. You can't even mandate a UUID be unique across every facility because we're all using different. I mean, we should have had, and it should have been created, a master.
Oh no, Mark, we're okay for UUID. It's a random number generator that sits within the software. The probability that 2 UUIDs are generated that are exactly the same is like 1 to the 124th power.
No, but that's not my point. I have 100,000 users in my system.
Okay.
Right? So when we upgrade to 3.5, do they all get assigned a UUID? Now agency B comes along, who they work for, and submits the data to us. They submit it with a different UUID.
No. The UUID is record specific, not person specific or agency specific. It's record specific. So if they update a record, then the UUID sitting under the hood already exists in your state system, and now they're changing anything on the record they want. It will not be a new UUID. It'll be the same UUID, and it will connect directly to the UUID that exists in your system. So
I think a lot of people, including me, think a UUID, maybe I'm wrong, is like, Bill Smith is going to have a UUID that follows Bill Smith no matter where he works.
No. The UUID
then I apologize. I thought it was something else.
And not to get away from the UUID part of it, but in a former life, Mark, when I had cause to resend data at some point, sometimes over the years, we found that if you use the D agency 1, 2, and 4, which are the unique state ID, agency number, and agency state, along with eRecord 01, you were pretty good at finding a unique identifier with those 4 by leaving off the call sign and the dispatch, because those 4 things didn't change. So you may want to talk to your vendor and see if your state vendor and see if that would work for them. Maybe you can make an adjustment there that would help with that duplication until 3.5 is in place.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We definitely are going to make a change. It just, I wasn't sure that everybody else understood some of what was going on as well. So I will let it go, and thank you guys for your time.
But I do think, we might want to revisit this on another implementation call and just hear if other people have talked to their state vendors and maybe hear what people are thinking. So it's definitely a good conversation.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. Thanks for bringing up, Mark. These kind of things need to be rediscussed, right? I mean, we need to fully understand how this will be rectified, or at least made better with version 3.5. Josh, did we miss anything in that discussion that you would find valuable? I know this has been a real passion of yours. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Maybe just a couple things. In NHTSA 3.4, we already know the state and the agency. That's not an issue. It's not an issue nationally. So a PCR number is supposed to identify a PCR uniquely within an agency, within a state. The data dictionary says so. So if it doesn't, then it's a compliance issue in my mind. In NHTSA 3.5, PCRs will have UUIDs. And as Anne mentioned in the chat, personnel working in an agency will also have a UUID that represents the data object, or that uniquely identifies the data object that represents that personnel in that agency. The same person working in a different agency could have a different UUID in that second agency that is the identifier for the data object that represents that person in that agency. So UUIDs are universally unique because of the algorithm by which they're generated. There's never, the same value will never be generated twice, even by totally independent systems across the universe. But in NEMSIS, we've scoped them to be within an agency. So a person has a UUID assigned to them in their agency, and same thing with PCRs. They're universally unique, but they are scoped within an agency.
Yeah, and sorry, Mark, I think I missed that part of your question. I apologize. So hopefully that clarifies the UUID associated with the personnel. Yeah, thanks. I see the chat. Yeah, there's a lot of helpful comments. Thank you. Great. Yeah. Thank you, folks. Yeah. And if Mark, if you want to dig into this a little bit, again, we'd be happy to revisit this. And again, any agency or any vendors that are using a different hash or different process to ensure uniqueness, we would love to hear about it.
We do exactly what was described with the agency and the PCR number, because we have our understanding was that is the compliance is to have unique number across for the agency for all time.
Right, and Drew is giving an example of what they use to generate a unique identification as well. Yeah, we'll look into that, Drew. I don't completely understand MD5. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
I think the weakness with using CAD number is that that's probably a number assigned to the incident. And then you could have multiple patient care reports on one incident, and they would all end up having the same identifier.
Yep. Good discussion.
We have encountered a system that they're not NEMSIS compliant, but they do, I guess, EPCR in quotes, and they let the user enter the PCR number. That should still not change, hopefully, but yeah, uniqueness was a challenge.
Thanks, and thanks for the trivia, Ben. That's really helpful.
All right, we'll go ahead and move forward with the agenda, but I think we'll need to see this on the agenda again for some good discussion, and maybe even some discussion at annual meeting too. That's always a great opportunity. And speaking of annual meeting, that's what's next on our agenda. Monet is going to visit with us for just a few minutes about some details for our annual meeting. Monet?
All right, thank you. Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as we continue to prepare for the NHTSA annual meeting, I'm very excited to inform you that we have been allocated funding to assist state and territory. Is my camera on? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so yes. So we've been allocated funding to assist state and territory EMS data managers to attend the annual meeting in person. We have known for many years that state managers have wanted to attend the meeting, but they have limited funding available and allocated for travel and conferences. So as states prepare to transition to version 3.5, we feel it's important for you to have your voices heard and for you to have a seat at the table. During the week of March 28th, I sent a personalized invitation letter to each state and territory data manager, inviting them to attend the meeting. The week of April 4th, just last week, I sent another email to state managers to inform you about the funding opportunity and ask you to complete a 6-question survey or application. So to date, we have received 24 responses and we're currently reviewing those applications. We will close the application on this week, Friday, April 15th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. If you have not completed the application yet, please try to do so at your earliest convenience. It's a really quick and simple survey or questionnaire about if you've attended in the past, what you want to learn. And then during the week of April 18th, we will start working with our funders at NHTSA, Office of EMS, to determine the process to distribute the funding. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly show you, maybe I'll be able to show you the form. And you'll just get a good idea that we're just asking for things like your title, your state, if you want a full or partial scholarship, and then if you've attended in the past, how much you might need, and let's see what you wish to learn. So it's a really quick questionnaire. And then let's see. And the other thing I wanted to mention, for those of you who are not state managers, just the vendor community, we currently have the U-Market portal functional. We're trying to work through some issues as it relates to how to ensure that we have a minimum of 2 software representatives and maybe 2 state representatives, because we're still trying to be mindful of the space limitations as it relates to the pandemic situation. So as soon as we have this information available to send out, we will get it on our homepage or on our site that's allocated for the annual meeting. We currently have a tab on the NHTSA's website where we'll place all the information, the registration, the draft agenda, and other important information on how to register at the Deer Valley Lodges. And I'll stop sharing right now to inquire if there are any questions. Okay, if you have questions, please send me an email, call me. Don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. I'll get back to you. If you have any suggestions, send those to us as well. Thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, Monet. Next on our agenda, we'd like to invite John Beckett with ET3 to provide an update on that model. John, are you with us today?
Yes, I am. Julianne, can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quickly. Okay. So just a few updates. We've got a pretty good amount of records coming in from an EPCR perspective. So just to give you some context, 134 active submitters. So we've got a majority, and there are a group of folks that, participants that is, that we are seeking to get them active as well. We're right above the 12 million mark. So successfully submitted records that include historical plus calendar year 2021 through 2022. So that's as of April 5th. We also successfully completed our March ET3 NEMSIS 3.5 testing cycle. So we are pleased to have actually gotten one of the vendors through as successfully, and we're happy with the outcome and the performance that was experienced during that period. And the next test cycle is going to be planned for June 2022. So we do expect that there will be more vendors ready by then. And so we're going to go ahead and schedule another test cycle then during that period. We also conducted in February a ET3 data submission and accuracy webinar. And then in March, we had an ET3 monthly dashboard report webinar. The outcomes of that is that we have successfully developed and distributed the monthly dashboard report. And this is one that will come out every month, as the title suggests. We're going to be sending this out to ET3 participants via email. That is our initial way of distribution. And we have gotten some pretty positive feedback in terms of both what the participants are receiving in terms of metric information, but also in terms of being able to see what is going on with the submissions of their data. So we are providing both awareness through the report and also online access that can help in terms of understanding how much data was received and what month they were received in. And, they can actually go in, participants can actually go in and look at the records, individual records themselves as well. So all of that is accomplishments. And these webinars were conducted with participants. We had some pretty good feedback and pretty good response from those participants that attended the webinar. From that, we've got a growing number of participants that successfully have implemented. So implementation means we've got EPCR submissions, we have claims submitted, and we have proper use of the ET3 custom fields. So again, just want to congratulate those participants and vendors and others who have been involved in getting this far within the program. In terms of our things that we're pursuing right now, we do have a number of dropped and missing records that we're pursuing. So a lot of that will require resubmissions. We are doing some research and analysis to correctly identify accurate the agency field values. So as you know, sometimes things change in terms of those values, and we do need to make sure that we're matching what the vendor's sending us to what is on the NHTSA list of demographics field values. So again, that's a very important step. And for any known issues, we're going to reach out to those vendors and participants, and whenever available, we'll try to use PCR identifiers to indicate which PCRs we would like to see resubmitted. To prevent some of this during outages, we do ask that vendors, if possible, cease submissions during those planned and unplanned outages periods. So again, this is an important step to minimize the missing records or drop records that occur. We have some issues that we would like to just point out. I mentioned the dropped records. We do have expired API security keys. So we are trying to support this by sending out email notifications on our mailing list to both participants and to vendors to let them know in advance that a key is about to expire. So in some cases we've found, the keys have expired, but the vendor or the participant may not have known that. So we are trying to reach out and correct that issue. We also have incomplete submissions. So in some cases there may be missing custom field values, and that includes claims submitted as well. So it's not just no entries on the EPCR records, but claims might not have been submitted. And we do go through an exercise of matching claims up with those PCR records. And then all of us know there is historical data submission that the program asks for. A lot of that data is in version 2, so there were migration constraints. And there are some, things that we are allowing for where we just, absolve that requirement. And that is happening on a case-by-case basis. Just real quick, I just want to point out there is a monthly release schedule that you can look ahead to see when an outage is going to occur. The next one here is going to be on April the 28th. And we have another one in May, June. So there is monthly outages that we're going to have where we have multiple releases that may be, again, coming out and will impact the data submissions. Typically, it's going to be between 5 and 9 on the Thursday of the month. So again, that helps in terms of planning so that if you have the ability to cease data submissions, that would be a good time to implement that. And we will send a reminder 2 days prior. Don't forget that all participants are required to submit whether they've begun implementing ET3 or not. So a lot of questions came in around, well, I haven't implemented yet, so do I still need to send my data in? The answer is yes there. And that data, again, that's required is EPCR data as well as claims data. So we want everyone to be consistent with the data submission. And if there's any questions, there is a participation agreement and a data submission guide that you can refer to. Just real quick, I just want to just mention the monthly dashboard. It is a visual display of the participants' performance in implementing the transport to alternative destination and the treatment in place interventions. So it is being emailed out monthly by the ET3 project officers. It does provide useful data that increases the likelihood participants will successfully be able to achieve the model aims and increase quality and reduce overall costs. And the performance metrics are tied to the primary and secondary drivers that are part of the ET3 model driver diagram. So just wanted to point that out as well. All right, I'm going to stop there. Julianne, any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Back to you, Julianne.
All right, thank you, John. We appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. Next on our agenda, I'm going to turn, sorry about that. I'm going to turn some time over to Clay. He's going to go through the agency location dashboard that's available to state authorized users. Looks like you're ready, Clay. We can see your screen.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Julianne. Yeah, folks, just wanted to let the states know that we have reposted the agency location dashboard. So if you just go to view reports, state reports, version 3 dashboards, as you do for the active dashboards with V3 data, we've reposted the agency location dashboard right here, the second one down on the list. Thanks to Karin Jacobson and others who found some discrepancies in the record counting that was happening in this dashboard. So we were able to make those corrections, and the dashboard is now back open. And a little refresher on the purpose of this dashboard. It was a call really that was made related to the COVID pandemic, the need to kind of understand the status of agencies, where are agencies located, what parts of my state or my area are they serving populations. So this dashboard was just to help characterize who is serving what geographic regions within your state. If you go in as a state, of course, you see your state data, and Felicia was kind enough to give me permission to show the data for the state of Utah, just to indicate perhaps how this dashboard might be useful. So I'll cue in here just on Utah and indicate a little bit how it's used. It's though agency mailing address and other addresses associated with the EMS agency are associated with the DEM file, that's not collected at a national level. So the way that we developed this dashboard was just to take a look and see which agencies were responding to calls within each county. So for example, Felicia in the state of Utah can look at any county within the state and indicate which agencies are providing the bulk of the care within those geographic regions. So here I'm highlighting Millard County. If I click on Millard County, it will limit the displays, the pie charts and others to just those agencies that are serving that county. This is a rural county, and so we can see that there's a primary responder here, and then of course we have some air medicals that are landing in that area as well, and some medical transports, right? So Millard County is famous for ATV injuries. I think what's called Little Sahara is in that county. So lots of air medical, and then you're able to just look at the level of service, the primary type of service that was offered, organizational type, organizational tax status and organizational status is volunteer, mixed, or non-volunteer. If you want to click within a specific agency, you can do that as well and pull data for a specific agency. So hopefully this can help our state data managers with some of the questions perhaps you're receiving regarding the status of the agencies and what geographic regions they're serving and what are the characteristics of those agencies serving in each geographic area within your state. So I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions about the use of this dashboard. Okay, thank you, Julianne.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda, I'm going to turn some time back over to Jen. We tried to split up her topics to give her a little bit of a break in between. Jen's going to talk for a few minutes about the collaborative work that we did with vendors and states on custom element best practices and support materials, recommendations. Jen, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, and I just want to make sure you are seeing a Word document and not a desktop.
Yes, Word document, not a desktop.
I always like to confirm I'm sharing the correct screen. So good morning again. One of the topics that comes up quite often from all of the stakeholders is custom elements and creating custom elements. So we had a committee put together and many of you were on the phone where we talked about what could help or what could be needed. And it was determined that a kind of a mix of tools, a toolkit would be the best approach. So there is a guide, which is here, that walks through the purpose of this. And as always, we want to say, you know, this is not intended to replace any successful process that you already have in place. We hope that it accentuates any process that you have in place, or it helps you develop a process. A question that was often asked that we wanted to make sure was answered was, what's the difference between the customization? What customization can you do? And, you know, what are the examples of that? How do I go about figuring out, do I even need a custom element? And of course, along with all of this is discussing things with your agency vendor or your state vendor, your receive and process vendor. So in the middle, there is a, you know, how do I know what or if customization is necessary? Takes you through and walks you through the process. Ignore that little green thing. That this is obviously a draft. So there will be a link here that will take you directly to the flow chart, which you will see in just a moment. And then toward the end of this is also a timeline. And keep in mind, this is a best practices guide, so it could go quicker. It does not have to take this total amount of time. And the timeline is just a picture kind of to give you an idea. Some things can happen concurrently. Some things have to be completed before the next step can be started. And then at the end of the document is the processes, who does them typically. And again, if your state does it differently, this is just best practices guide, the timeline associated with it, what happens during that time and how long it should take to complete. And one of the things that the committee was made up of vendors, agencies, states, and the TAC. And so there was a lot of discussion about the timeframes. And 90 days was the one everyone could agree on, that it shouldn't take more than 90 days for a state to work with their state receive and process vendor to create the elements that are needed so that your agencies can implement. And then once that happens, that's when the agencies are able to start implementing. And of course, if you have any comments or anything like that, please share them. More than happy to take any suggestions and talk about them. Also included is where the link that hasn't been put in yet is the flow chart for the custom elements, which follows right along with the guide. So you're starting here. Does NHTSA already do it? And that is something that some people laughed about including, but that really is the first step, like making sure that NHTSA doesn't have this in an element that maybe you haven't used before. So you want to make sure that you've looked at that. Am I just adding codes where I don't really need to make customization? I just need to add to the drop downs. Is there something already similar within the NHTSA data dictionary where if I add a value to the allowed values that already exist, right? So that's a custom value. Does somebody else already do this? And that is one of the things that, oh, and I found a typo. Shoot. Okay, sorry. I just want to write it down so I don't forget. One of the things that we're really encouraging is that states talk to each other. This call, other call, vendors talk to each other. If someone already has a custom element developed where they're collecting the same information that's needed, let's try and use it across the board so that it can be shared, so that data can be aggregated. And the COVID response is a really good example of that. Adding additional values to something that's already been created. And then finally, is this something completely new? Along with that, we have also created a checklist for custom elements that's kind of a guide to the step-by-step process throughout the getting it created. So you've determined you need one, and who's responsible, what the next steps are once you've done it. It's just a guide to really help you get through determining if you need one and what the best approach is to take it. Also within the guide is some help for the states to help their vendors. Like, what information do you need to provide to your vendors in order for them to be able to create these custom elements? I know I just did a lot of talking and flashed through multiple documents. Did anyone have any questions, comments, want me to go back to something?
Hey, this is Anne in Arizona. I just had a comment and I was typing it, but I'm not that fast. So as a state, you know, I've been a data manager for a long time, but there obviously was a point where I was pretty new. And I know NHTSA cannot tell states they cannot build a new custom element. And sometimes I'd get feedback from vendors. Maybe it was later in the process, maybe it was earlier on. Would it be appropriate for NHTSA to have somebody on their team, not necessarily just approve, but kind of meet with any states that are proposing to have new custom data elements built to help them make sure there's not kind of something already out there, or maybe there's a different approach. The vendors might kind of like having it go through something first. I think if I was pretty new still, I wouldn't even know necessarily the other creative ideas you could do that I do now, and how custom elements sound amazing, but a lot of times they're really hard to collect. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Just someone, like I said, not like an approval process, because I don't think that would go over well, but just, I can't think of the word. You know, somebody that just kind of says, hey, okay, let's see if, because it also costs money usually for the states to get custom elements from their vendor. And of course it costs the vendors to build it for their clients. And sometimes they have to, and sometimes it's in statute, but everybody like to save money too. If we could just add a value or do it a different way.
Oh no, absolutely. And one of the first things that we talk about, and it's repeated in every step, is talk to the TAC, talk to your vendors. The V3 call is a really good, if everyone's comfortable with that, is a really good place to talk about it, because someone else might have already done it. So it might exist, which could cut down on time, right? It might be something that could be collected in a different way from existing NHTSA elements, right? So it's not, you don't necessarily need a custom element, you just need to maybe pull it into the report in a different way. So I think that that's absolutely one of the most important parts is to talk. I don't know, Julianne or Clay, I don't know about, I know we can't use the term approve. Could we, I don't know how to say
sounds like you need a mediator or somebody that's legal,
that's a good word, Mark. And I like Jeff put in consulting and Ridgely put in expert advice. We need to find just the right term for it, peer review. And that's one thing that came up quite a bit in these planning sessions with a good handful of the stakeholders was how to use existing elements and values to the best of the ability of those of that extent before going to a custom value, because there are definite drawbacks to using custom values. So I think, Jen, I know you've got it in under each of the sections and also on the checklist. I wonder if there's a way that we could highlight, talk with state vendor, maybe add or emphasize consult with NHTSA TAC, because we're certainly willing to do that work. Go ahead, Clay.
Two ideas that this committee came up with that I thought were really good, and they're not included in these documents because they're kind of like tasks. One was perhaps as we move to version 3.5, to go through the custom element library and look for two different state custom elements related to the same topic that are so very close together, right? You can do that today, right? You can go into that into the library and look, for example, for opioid overdose related codes. And there are some very subtle differences between custom elements that states have developed. So maybe what we could do is to just do kind of a retrospective look as people begin to move to version 3.5. They'll probably review their custom elements, and maybe we could provide some recommendations. Hey, Rhode Island, you have one that's very similar to New York. Do you want to kind of aggregate? We could work with states in that way. And then the other idea that was brought up, Jen, I think with the 90-day review, will you correct me, because you've gone through the timeline very carefully. There is this idea that once the state has completed the evidence or the products that a vendor needs to build the custom element, there's a 90-day period. Perhaps that could be submitted to the NHTSA TAC as well at that time, and we could do a review just to see if it is dissimilar from an existing element, or if there's another element that's very close to it. I agree. It would be nice if we could reduce the burden that's associated with this important aspect of the standard, but it does tend to be burdensome. And as I think we kind of talked about those on the committee, do either of those resonate with you?
I know that for different vendors, it was a different burden. So that's the part. That's how we came to the 90.
And just
one more.
And just in your experience, I apologize. Anne was the one who brought up this point a little bit, and it's great. Do either of those ideas sound helpful, or could we do? The other idea that was talked about briefly that I remember on that committee was having, like a veteran data manager help a more novice data manager as they're moving to 3.5 and could help with custom elements. Do any of those seem like they would be more helpful than another? Rachel, others who have some good experience here? Ed?
I was just going to ask if I could get somebody to help me with 3.5.
Yeah.
This is Anne. I have one more comment to add to this that I think all of them are good. Yes, absolutely. The data managers call is one of the best places to kind of bounce things off. But, we have a lot of states participating and sometimes we have a lot to talk about. And sometimes I send out emails, but it has happened on occasion that I think, okay, we need to collect this thing. How do I do that? And it turns out when I've asked some other states or I've asked NHTSA that there is sometimes an acceptable way to collect it using maybe 3 different data elements that already exist. And every once in a while, maybe it's just me, but every once in a while, there's something I don't ever use. And so I haven't constructed in my brain a way to use those. I mean, sometimes we want duplicative reporting because it's the way we catch things that are off. You really actually kind of want things duplicated. But even for myself, I mean, if we have something where my leadership comes to me and said, we really need to determine this, before we step down that path, I would really like to be able to I have several places I bounce ideas off of. But
could it be as simple as sending out an email to the NHTSA data managers group and just say, has anybody done this yet?
And I have done that. And I think that's a good one to start with. I just thought maybe NHTSA, since they collect all the custom elements in their custom elements dictionary, might be like.
And not everybody always has time to think about it and reply. Yeah.
But, and usually I start with that. I just think, it'd be a nice pass through to go through, not a bottleneck, but, something that everybody kind of just goes through as a free little helpful consult of, is there any way we can do this faster, cheaper, with less difficulty?
Maybe we could, obviously you all know you're more than welcome to send an email to the TAC and we're always happy to help with that. But maybe we can, and Julianne, feel free to send me a signal, stop talking, but maybe we can set up something where we do have a little bit more formal where people submit it kind of almost like the state data set, right? Like, hey, we're looking at this custom element and the need for it. And it's just an email to us that says, has it happened before? Does the state already have this? Can you think of another way to do it? Give me your consult on it and let me know if I need to do any further work. Because I totally get where Anne's going. If they don't do it up front, then they're doing all of this time and effort to find out afterwards that already exists. So, and I know that seems simple, but maybe that's a good place to start and we could think about having something more formal.
Hey, Jen. Yeah, Jen, and I was kind of looking through as you were scrolling through this, and of course I've reviewed this in the past, but I don't remember, and Anne just kind of reminded me, I think when we go way back, that's the reason why we have the custom element library, right? Is so people can go and say, okay, my state wants to do this. I'm going to go and see if anybody else has done it, right? That's the whole purpose for that. But I don't know that we mention the library or its location in the tools. I think we do in the white paper that exists, but we probably can review these documents one more time, Jen, and make sure that we have reference here, right? So you can, I don't know who's driving, but you could type in opioid there, and then it will just search all states and provide you with an indication of who has done what on that topic. So that's the purpose for it, but I don't know that we mention it in the flow chart or in the steps. Jen, we could look at that, because this is a powerful way to look and see if somebody else is doing what you're doing or want to do.
Yeah, and we definitely, within the guide, there's references to not only the library, but also the existing technical guide, right? That they've put together, the white paper on that. We try to give them links, even to the data dictionary, so that they can take a look and really, find out what the steps are. Yeah.
Hey, Claire,
but we can see if there's more places.
So I think Cherie's got a point. She put it in the chat that this is a place without some sort of formal process, that what's happened in the past, I think, is what's going to happen in the future. I'm more than happy to support that process. I don't think it's a TAC process. I think this is what the state data managers meet for at NHTSA, and I think that's a great place I'm happy to provide them with the support to track their requests and make sure they get on a list and bring them to the meeting and provide input from the TAC perspective. But ultimately, this comes back to somebody made a decision at the state director level, and that got passed down to the state data manager, who's now responsible for making this happen. And we're kind of the third step in that process, which is, okay, what should happen? First is look around and see what else is going on. It kind of ties into Jen's spreadsheet there. And then, what we're ultimately trying to do here is, where possible, standardize custom elements. And that makes perfect sense, because then in version 3 point whatever comes after 3.5, if there's a custom element that's been standardized across 25, 30 states, then it makes sense to just move that into, it may make sense. I guess there's exceptions, but I would say it would seem to make sense that become part of the next version of NHTSA and so on. So I think some sort of a little structured process would be great. I'd like to talk to Dia and Hannah and the leadership of the state data managers group and see what they think about that. But again, happy to support the effort, happy to do the legwork on it, pull them all together, and then have for the meeting, instead of sitting down in the meeting and that being the initial discussion, have it pulled together and say, okay, someone submitted, state X submitted this element. We pulled from the custom elements library, there are 7 similar elements, and here's what they look like. And, can we agree on what this should look like moving forward as a group? So here's our input. You guys take a look at this and tell us where you want to go. Something along those lines. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. It formalizes it. It gets everybody involved. It makes sure the data managers' inputs were taken, and that the state director just didn't decide to do something and didn't really think it through with without the knowledge of the background of what's actually in NHTSA now, and just decided to add an element where maybe it wasn't necessary. So I agree. I think a little bit of structure is there. I'd like to work that out through NHTSA. We certainly have a role. I don't think we're definitely not the person to say approve or not approve, as was said earlier, but happy to be the good stewards in the process. Over.
And John Becker added a nice comment regarding maybe a flow at the TAC that could be helpful. So we can kind of look at that. That's a good idea, John.
Let us put something together and we'll bring it back. And it certainly has to have a vendor input as well, because as we know, some of these things impact vendors differently. Some vendors have different perspectives on custom elements. I'm learning that more and more as I meet with the vendors. Let's see what the process would look like. Ideally, we make it something rather simple, right? The due diligence has to be done before you go to the meeting and decide this is the way we want to go, or this is not the way we want to go. And it can't take away from the original intent of the request. But certainly there's, I say it over and over and over again, the most frustrating part of my job is watching states struggle and pay for and use resources the same thing, to do the same thing, to develop the same thing and implement the same thing. So for what it's worth.
Thank you, everybody, very much.
Great comments in the chat too. Thank you. All right, Eric, you're next up on the agenda for any items of interest from the Office of EMS.
Perfect time. Just thanks to all for your participation today. I really appreciate it. And the only thing I have on my list is just kind of a real brief update. We are past the halfway point in meeting with all of the vendors. And I have to say that I've learned a lot. There's a lot of different interesting perspectives. Many of the vendors have different approaches that I find to be quite interesting compared to others' approaches. Not saying anybody is right or wrong. Everyone has been providing open input, which is greatly appreciated. And I've even gotten follow-up emails from people after these meetings saying, hey, you know, I thought about this, and here's something else I'd like to add to the conversation. And I really appreciate those, because those are the ones that are well thought out and obviously meaningful, because someone has taken the time to put that in writing and send it to me. And we go back and make sure they're edited. So I'm going to take all of the responses and sort of categorize them and put them together. And we'll give you an overview in Park City as part of our annual update of what the responses are. I will say they are coming together around some very specific topics. I don't want to mention those because I don't want to skew the results for the people we haven't talked with yet. But I find this to be a very interesting process, and I really appreciate your input. Unless someone has something for me today, that's all I have for the group.
Any questions for Eric while we have him? All right, we'll go ahead and do open forum. I just wanted to put something out there as you guys are thinking about questions or comments you might have for open forum. We made an error in the monthly activity report for March, and I just wanted to correct that publicly. We put EPR systems down as compliant for a V3-4, and they completed their compliance testing for their fireworks V1.3 product for NHTSA version 3.5. So that is correct on the website. I just wanted to put that out there publicly that we made an error on that activity report and want to correct that. So appreciate your patience with that. Any questions, comments, concerns for open forum?
This is Josh Slegler. Clay, I was wondering if we should mention anything about the IHE path to production process, but I think we're still waiting for some info too.
Oh, yeah, Josh. Yeah, thank you. And I just received an email from the IHE folks during this call. I haven't looked at it yet, but yeah, so we have, Eric has provided the funding necessary for us to formally enter into the path to production process that's been defined on this call several times by TAC members or presentations by IHE. It's basically an opportunity for us to do the hard work that Josh and the e-outcomes group has done to define use cases to get, specifically to get patient care information back into the EPCR report, or in some fashion allowing our providers to evaluate the quality of their care. So the exciting thing about this is that IHE offers us the opportunity to be in the same room and actually work with the other components of the healthcare industry that have to receive or send data, right? So it's we've done a great job of deciding what we want to do, but it's been difficult for us to ensure that that works well for what Cerner, Epic, or other folks who we may be requesting that data from, what they want to do. Well, this path to production allows those people to all get in the same room. So we're just completing the contract, and so hopefully that will be finished in just a week or so. And we've asked Josh if he would be willing to continue to work with the path to production process, moving the e-outcomes group into that process. So I think there'll be more to come on that very soon. So we're excited about that. It really is not only refining the use cases, but actually building or utilizing existing tools and actually participating in Connect-a-thon. So it's not only just theoretical, basically. I mean, we go, the process will take us all the way through ensuring that the process works with all parties in the same room. So we're excited about that. So yeah, Josh, anything I've kind of missed?
I think that was covered it well. We're going to have educational sessions that IHE will coordinate, excuse me, which will be available free of charge to all of you because the NHTSA TAC is paying for it. And then, like Clay said, these connect-a-thons, these opportunities to get in the same room or virtual room, either way, with vendors from the hospital side of the handshake. We're hoping that a lot of the value that IHE will bring is their connections with the hospital and HIE vendors, kind of those people that we on the EMS side don't always have strong connections with. So we'll be able to get some of you in the same room with some of them, working on some integrations.
Hey, Josh, it's Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Question, is this to be done at the state level or the provider level, or rather the agency level, or how is these connections going to be established? I'm just not familiar with it.
Yeah, we've explored a few use cases, all of which could be covered in this path to production process. One use case is for a hospital EMR to send data to an agency's EPCR system. Another use case is for a statewide HIE to send outcome data to a state level EPCR system. So yeah, multiple avenues that could be developed.
So how did they consider on a statewide system, if you're getting data in at a state level from third-party vendors and it comes in at the state, is there an avenue to take that data and send it back to those third parties, or is it just going to only be accessible at the state level because that's where it was sent to?
Right. Yep. Those are exactly the kinds of questions that we'd like to explore and get some practice on.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Are there any questions or comments for open forum? Thank you for your comments and questions and bringing forth issues and suggestions. We really appreciate that, that collaboration. Our next V3 implementation call isn't until April 27th. We hold these on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And if you'll notice, the Zoom link is the same Zoom link that we've had for quite a while. We hope to be able to keep that link the same. We'll only change it if that is needed for meeting security. So if you're not getting the Google group messages, please reach out and let us help you try and find a resolution for that. We've got a few workarounds. I know some people are still struggling with that. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for contributing. We appreciate your time. We know you're very busy, and I think that concludes our meeting for today. Be safe out there, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you.